So once again, it's my honor and pleasure to bring on the program director for the IES Women in Sales programs, Gina Stracuzzi.
Thank you, Fred. Welcome, everyone. I am super excited to welcome my guest today, Tamara Sniffen, who is Vice President of Commercial Excellence, which anything with the title Excellence in it, I love. And she is with Stryker. I am excited for our conversation because I just hit it off with Tamara when we talked earlier, and she has such a fascinating background. So I will ask you to welcome our guest, Tamara.
Thank you, Gina. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are.
Sure. Yeah. So I have been with Stryker Corporation for 25 years. Prior to that, I worked a little bit with a semiconductor company, a Japanese semiconductor company, and lived in Japan for 2 years. My sister had started at Stryker before me, and she was loving it. We were living together, both single at the time in our 20s, had so many great things to say about the organization. So I joined and have loved it as much as she has. And we've both actually been here over 25 years now, which is living in the Silicon Valley. It's pretty unusual to have one person at a company that long, but the two of us have been here. And I think what I love most about it, it was $2 billion when I started. It's now $20 billion. So the number of roles that I've been able to do within the last 25 years, being a part of the scale and the transformation has just been incredibly rewarding. And it's medical device. So of course, the purpose behind rebuilding lives and helping lives, saving lives is just fabulous.
That's awesome. That is awesome. And you, even your background raises a really great point. And it's something that in the Women in Sales Leadership Forum that we talk about quite a bit, and that is sticking with a company and really riding the wave of their growth and all the opportunities it can afford you. And we're in such a transient kind of culture when it comes to work. It used to be, if you moved around, it was looked on badly, but now everyone just kind of expects it. So it's refreshing to hear both you and your sister have been there so long. That is awesome.
Yeah, it really is. And it says a lot about the culture at Stryker, the people at Stryker. And I think as long as you're challenged, you're learning, you're growing, you're new opportunities, it's good to stay with one organization as long as you're continuing to be able to expand and grow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about really, I mean, you've seen the company grow, you've been part of that growth. And so what habits or processes have you seen that help people be really successful, the ones that you employ?
Yeah. So, those that are disciplined tend to do really well, right? Disciplined around their time management, disciplined around, what are the rules and responsibilities? What are the expectations? Am I getting those things done? I find that goes a long, long way. With our sales force, there's a lot to do with, okay, a case happens, a surgery happens. Now I've got to put in what products were used in that case. Are they putting it in a timely manner? Typically that same day, right? Because there's more cases the next day and all that work piles up if you don't stay on top of it. Back to the discipline and time management, get that paperwork in. And then the whole value chain, right, is able to work to close the order and get everything processed down or up the chain, really. So yeah, I think discipline and time management are huge.
Yes. And you hear people will kind of complain, if you will, that the paperwork of things is in the reporting and all of that. It just weighs them down. But to your point, if you stay on top of it, if you are disciplined, then it doesn't become this heavy burden. So I think that's great advice.
Yeah, we have
I
a VP GM that runs our trauma business, and he's so quick to say, it's part of the job, right?
Right.
That is doing the job. And he's been in sales at Stryker almost as long as I've been there, and I love it because he's very quick to say, it's part of the job, just get it done, right? Don't fight it. It's not going away. It is what it is, and get good at it, just like you are with closing the deal.
Awesome. That's great advice. When we spoke earlier, you mentioned Stryker as a sales paradise. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, so we are very sales centric, very customer centric, and there's 55,000 employees across Stryker. In the division that I'm in, we've got 3,500 people. 1,500-ish are part of the sales force. The other 2,000, we line up behind the sales force. So everything is the sales force is the closest to the customer. Therefore, let's listen to the sales reps. Let's do everything we can to support what they need to make sure that the customer and really ideally the patients are getting what they want. And I think that's, we're not supply chain centric. We're not, digital centric. Now, do we want to be really good at those things? Absolutely. But first and foremost, we consider ourselves a sales company, and everything starts with that sale, that order, that patient that's on the table. And so therefore we just all are constantly thinking about and supporting the sales force.
That's really wonderful. And it dawns on me that it might be valuable for our listeners to explain a little bit about what Stryker does.
Yeah.
I mean, how they operate.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Stryker, I mentioned, we were 20 billion last year, 2023. And we have a huge arm in the orthopedics business. So joint replacement, upper extremity shoulder replacement, foot and ankle products, trauma products, spine products. That would be our orthopedics arm. We also have med surg and neurotechnology, which would be neurovascular products, endoscopy products, beds and stretchers, powered instruments. So there's you can tell there's quite a few medical devices within our global portfolio.
Great, great. So talk to us a little bit about your philosophy on networking internally and externally, because this is something that comes up for women quite often. And it's hard sometimes if you're juggling multiple hats as a person, and this goes for men too. If you're a caretaker or a parent, sometimes networking is the thing that gets pushed to the side because it's you're not demanded to be there. So tell us a little bit about your philosophy and how it has helped you with your customers.
Yeah. And you mentioned networking internally and
Yes.
externally. Maybe I'll start with the internal first, because I think that was more natural for myself and a lot of leaders at Stryker. That the external piece I've sort of grown into over the years. So if we start internally, and I get this question a lot, like, oh, have you grown in your career? What made you successful? And it always came down to a couple things. One, results, I was performance. The other one was relationships, and really those relationships within Stryker, with Salesforce and the internal functions. And, it's all about, are you collaborating? Are you really listening on all levels? Are you thinking about, okay, I'm not going to, fight this one because it's going to put strain on the relationship for something we have to work through next week or 2 years from now. But it's really, how are we listening to each other and trying to figure out how it can be a win-win and really what is best for the business. So I think really focusing on those relationships internally is key. Stryker did an excellent job early in my career. A lot of happy hours, a lot of softball teams, like that networking piece was really important. And let's have a lot of fun while we're doing the hard work all day, but let's spend time outside of work, really getting to know each other on a deeper level. We have a yearly engagement survey that every employee does. And one of the 12 questions on that survey is, do you have a best friend at work? And so that's important for us. We want everybody to
Yeah.
have a best friend at work. And any career, there's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be highs. There's going to be lows. And if you have a friend that you can talk it through with, that understands because they're in that organization with you, that makes a huge difference. And I think a lot of the Stryker people really get that, and they do have many very close, very dear best friends at work. And it all comes down to that, spending time and caring about one another and really valuing and growing those relationships. And then on the external piece, I found early in my career, because I had so many friends within Stryker, that I wasn't doing the networking externally. I was really fulfilled personally with the relationships within Stryker. And it wasn't until I realized, wow, I may stay at this organization forever, that I realized, okay, I need to get out there more and network, just so I'm hearing other ideas, I'm learning about other industries. So I'm hearing what other supply chain and sales leaders are doing to drive success within their organizations. And it was a little bit like, okay, where do you start when you're trying to network externally? And so I spent a lot of time just talking to friends about what they did. Now there's a ton of organizations. There's Chief, Athena Alliance, there's women business leaders in healthcare. And so there's organizations you can join. I don't remember, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, all of these organizations, right? And so today it's so rich. And so my advice for the listeners would be, don't wait as long as I did to do that external networking, because it really helps you to see so much that you can then apply to your own role into your organization. And so, find a group to join. There's really some fabulous ones out there. The other thing you mentioned, the time, right? I've raised two kids while working full time, traveling the globe, global teams. They're now 15 and 17, and the 15-year-old will get his driver's license next month. So it's a different ball game, right? They're very independent. They need not a lot of time, but those early years as a working mom with, 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, or even a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old. I mean, it was crazy. And again, I was traveling international, once a month in some of those years. There was no time to network. But my advice would be, you've got to figure out that time for yourself, right? And build it in back to the time management and the discipline. You need to figure out, even if it's not nearly the time I can put in. Like today, I have so much time to join clubs and do all these things. My boys don't want to hang out with me at night. But how do you find, just something small, something bite-sized to grow external network? I think that's really important. And there's certainly several ways to do that this day and age.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's something that we discussed in the 2 women in sales forums that I run. It comes up a lot, like making it all work. Something you said earlier made me wonder too. We just had a really in-depth conversation with some of our partners about the hybrid workspace and how many people are back in the office versus selling from a hybrid standpoint. So I would like to ask you a 2-part question. Is most of your sales force back in the office? And then if they're not, how do you help women, especially primarily, make sure that they're getting these networking opportunities and that they're, they're grown adults, taking advantage of them and going to customer events and getting to know other people in the company?
Yeah, it's a great question. So our model for the sales force has actually not changed, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, because our sales reps are spending so much time at the hospitals in ORs. So they continued to do that straight through COVID, right? And so they're still out there every day networking with our customers. Now, the big question is, with them being out there in the hospitals, how do we help them build relationships internally? And we have several ways that we do that. Our ERGs are incredibly strong. We have a Stryker Women's Network. And even within those Stryker Women's Network, we would do podcasts like we're doing today. So they're hearing from female leaders, both internally and externally. But we also break it down by regions around the country where they can go to a Stryker Women's Network happy hour in Houston for everybody that's in that area. I'm actually flying on Sunday to Minneapolis. And on Tuesday, I'm going to speak to the Midwest Stryker Women's Network chapter for an hour. And I think there's like 70 women, both sales reps and internal, coming together to hear that talk, to do a happy hour afterwards and network. So we provide those types of opportunities through our ERGs. We also do a national sales meeting where we bring an entire business's sales force together over multiple days. And that's a great opportunity for them to get to know each other better. So I know SWIN is sponsoring, I think it's next month in April, they're sponsoring a get together of all the women sales reps. They're bringing them all in together over a day or two to actually network and learn and listen to other speakers. So we do a ton to try to help them build those relationships.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I like hearing that. So let's talk a little bit about collaboration between sales reps and operations, and kind of the whole sales enablement piece of it, if you will. Because that's something that comes up quite often, that when we talk to people, that it's, can be a frustrating experience for some.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So our sales reps, at least in the orthopedics world where I sit today, our sales reps would have what we call a local branch or a local office where their customer service reps, for the most part, their operation folks sit. And the strong sales reps are really working on that relationship. They're coming into their branch. I was down in our San Diego branch a couple of weeks ago, and we had a sales rep in there teaching the operation about the products. The operations physically moving the products all day long in and out of hospitals, but they don't know a lot about what the products do. And the sales rep was there walking the operation around. Hey, this is what this product's used for. This is why we use this screw in a body versus this screw. And that type of partnership. Hey, we're going to teach you, you teach us, right? We're in this together, creating that team, that culture really goes a long way. I know that a lot of times the regional sales manager and the operations manager will do potlucks together or barbecues at the house and invite both teams. So you really see them working together as a family where it's done well. Oh, you're on mute, Gina.
Thank you. It sounds as if your sales team must be very, very well trained. They must have to go through a pretty rigorous training protocol, I would think, to understand so much about these devices and how they work in the body and all of that.
Yeah, they do. They do. Yeah, we do have pretty robust sales training where they'll come on site, usually depending on the division, maybe for 2 straight weeks. There's a lot of tests, there's a lot of reading. And then we're constantly, the marketing teams are constantly doing calls where they're training the sales force. The national sales meetings and we have mid-year meetings are all about talking about the products and the applications. So it's pretty robust, to your point. We have
Good.
full, med ed teams that are helping run a lot of that sales training.
I bet that's really interesting. Really interesting. So let's talk a little bit about what your number one piece of advice would be for someone new into the career of selling, and then how they can keep moving forward or jumpstart their success, as they continue.
Yeah, it's hard to pick one thing, so I'm just going to throw out a couple. I mean, the first one is that whole idea of a growth mindset, right? And not ever getting stuck. We do a lot of culture work at Stryker, and one of the things we think about is don't ever freeze, but more think of you and your life as like a flowing river, right? And you're always going to be going down a new path and different boulders, as you're flowing with that river. And don't ever freeze, right? You want to continue to learn and grow and keep that mindset. And then one of the ways that I suggest doing that, if there's a role that you want to go into, and back to the networking piece, people love to, hey, can I pick your brain on this particular role? So I do suggest, find people that are doing the role you want to do, whether it's the next role or 2 roles up, and talk to them and figure out what are your gaps to getting there, and have them help you focus on what can a development plan be so that you can continue to grow. But I think, just being curious, open mindset. I mean, you just need to have that early,
Yeah.
and at no point does it ever end.
Yes. Good advice. I mean, continuous learning and keeping yourself open to opportunities is so critical. Which, leads to another question. It's easy to get frustrated. Um, Sales can be a a lonely job at times. It can be very frustrating because your company might want you to put a deal on the table that is not going to be acceptable to the customer, and it just can be frustrating. So what advice would you give to people who have to deal with that frustration, or other functions or processes even within their company that they find frustrating?
Yeah, great question. And the first thing that comes to mind is a tool that we call the mood elevator that we use within Stryker, where, at the bottom of the mood elevator, you'd be depressed, right? Like a sort of worst state. And at the top of the mood elevator, you would be grateful, right? You'd just be full of gratitude. And then in between there, like let's say in the middle of it, right below middle of it, you might start to be feeling a little irritated. And then that little bit of irritation turns to frustration, and you kind of move down the mood elevator. What we suggest is the best way to start moving up that mood elevator is to get curious, right? Like, what am I feeling? I'm starting to feel a little irritated. Why am I feeling it? Is there anything I can do about it? Right? Start taking a little accountability. Or if someone is frustrating you, start talking to them, ask questions to get from, hey, get curious about it, to start again moving up versus spiraling down. So we really use that tool. And you'll hear, I talked about the best friend at work. Some of my best friends on the leadership team, they'll call me and they'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm down the mood elevator. I'm like, okay, let's talk it out. Let's get curious. What questions can we ask? And let's start, moving our way back up. And it's a really helpful tool. I also think too, you've gotta take time to rest and recharge, and life gets a lot more complex, right? If you're early in your career, you still have no idea just how complex it's all going to get. Life just does. And I do this often when I'm presenting in front of a crowd, where I ask people, how long have you been in the workforce? If 0 to 5 years, raise your hand. 5 to 10 years, raise your hand. 10 to 20. And then I say, okay, all of you that are in the 20 plus years, how much more complex is your life today than it was in your early 20s when you were starting out? And I mean, they just go, 10x or, it's enormously more complex, right? Because of all the things that come with mortgage and family and, just a bigger job and all the things, sick parents, you name it. And so it's going to get more complex. And if you don't figure out now what helps you to relax and rejuvenate and get yourself in the better mind frame, I mean, the sun's going to come up tomorrow and, you want to be in a different state. And so you've got to figure that out. I love to exercise. That does a lot for me. I know I've got friends that meditate. I have some that go to the beach, right? If I go to the beach and I sit on the sound or I walk around, like I am a different person when I'm done with that. And I think you've got to figure out, who you are and what works for you and make sure that you have the discipline to unwind and make sure you're taking care of yourself when you're getting frustrated. The other, I know I'm talking a lot on this, but I'm going to share one other thing. I talked about the river and getting frozen. We do, as part of our culture work at Stryker, we unfreeze people and we teach them some of the tools that I'm talking about. And one of the facilitators of these unfreezing sessions mentioned that he was listening to a video on the gratitude, and he realized that when he's not up the mood elevator and he gets down and irritated and frustrated, that he shares it all with his wife. And he was listening to this speaker talk about journaling. When I'm feeling frustrated, I just write it all down in my journal. And it was like an aha moment for him that, oh my gosh, my poor wife has to listen to that. And instead I can just write it all down in my journal, and she doesn't have to be the recipient of this sort of frustrated, grumpy me. And he said it's really worked. And the wife's seen a difference and things are better at home. And I just thought that was a great example of where, who wants to have a grumpy person at home that's irritated and frustrated. And so finding those tools that work for you, I think are just, it's really important.
That is great advice. Well, we've come to the part of the show where we like to ask before we close up. We like to ask our guests for one final piece of advice that people can put into place in their careers to help take them to the next level.
Yeah. And I think we covered a lot. Your questions were excellent. I think everybody probably heard a nugget today, whether it's, what I need to, the thing we just talked about, what is it that's going to recharge me so I'm not that stressed out person at home that's down the mood elevator. Like I'm going to take that away. Or I'm going to journal. I'm going to be more disciplined. I'm going to think about my time management. My ask of the crowd would be whatever nugget that is, put that in play. You want to be 1% better tomorrow than you were today. And the day after tomorrow, you want to be 1% better than you were the day before, right? So just take one nugget from today and say, you know what, that resonated with me. I'm going to put that in play and continue to do that. Just every day, continue to grow, and you're really going to see some fabulous results pile up day after day and year after year.
Well, that is great advice, really. And I love the mood elevator. That's priceless. Well, thank you, Tamara. And thank you everyone for listening. And we will see you again next time.
Awesome. Thank you, Gina.